So I had this sermon that I wrote a long time ago that I used to preach in youth events, youth conferences when I used to do quite a bit of that. And the sermon was entitled, Dumb Things That I Have Done. I haven't preached that sermon in a long time, not because I have quit doing dumb things. The rate of those seems to have increased. But I quit preaching it, first of all, because I'm too old to ever be invited to speak in youth conferences again. And also because the sermon took 2 days to preach. So it was, if I was going to tell everything dumb that I had done, it was taking too long. So I've decided to sort of play off of it, though, with an opposite sermon. Wise things I want to do. Now, anybody here ever made a stupid decision? I mean, seriously, how many of you saw the story a little while ago about this Florida man, his name was Edward Archbold, who died, and they found out why. He had entered a contest to see who could eat the most live cockroaches. And the winner of the contest was going to win a large python. That's right. The one who ate the most live cockroaches wins a large live python. Now, first of all, why would you enter such a contest? Who needs a python? What do you do with a python? But he won, Edward won, or lost, because it turns out he died from eating the cockroaches, internally choking on them. You got to wonder what part of that whole adventure seemed like a good idea to make somebody sign up. I don't get that at all. You may have never done that one. No, let's find out. Anybody in here ever eaten a live cockroach? Raise your hand. Peter Lyon has eaten. And how many people are surprised by that? Raise your hand. Nobody. You may have never eaten a live cockroach unless you're Peter, but I'm going to ask you to raise your hands if you've ever made a foolish decision of any kind, financially, vocationally, relationally, if you've ever messed up, if you've ever made a decision that with the benefit of hindsight could be characterized by the word dumb. Raise your hand now, would you? Get your hand up now. Now, if your hand is up, turn to the person next to you and say, "Welcome to the School for Fools." Because that's where we are today. You just admitted it. We're in the School for Fools today, and we're in with a great textbook. The book of Proverbs is all about you either living a lifestyle of wisdom or living a lifestyle of foolishness. That's what the entire book is about. We make decisions, and then the decisions we make us. What I say, what I think, what I eat, what I read, where I go, who I'm with, what I do, how I work, when I rest. After a million little decisions, what you get is your life. And the Bible has a word for people who navigate life really well, and that word is wise. Not lucky, not wealthy, not advantaged, not successful, wise. Wisdom in the Bible is not the same as having a really high IQ. Wisdom in the Bible is not at all restricted to people who have advanced educational degrees. Wisdom in the Bible is the ability to make good decisions. Wisdom in the Bible is the art of living well because you have made wise decisions. Israel loved wisdom so much they couldn't stop talking about wisdom. They treasured it. They reflected on it. They celebrated it. They told stories about wisdom. They collected it in the wisdom literature in the Bible: Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Wisdom's very, very important. And so let's read about it. A few verses here in Proverbs chapter 9. Wisdom has built her house and has made 7 columns for it. She has had an animal killed for a feast, mixed spices in the wine, and set the table. She has set her servant woman to call out from the highest place in town, "Come in, ignorant people." And to the foolish she says, "Come eat my food and drink the wine that I've mixed. Leave the company of ignorant people and live. Follow the way of wisdom. If you will correct conceited people, you will only be insulted. If you reprimand evil people, you will only get hurt. Never correct conceited people. They will hate you for it. But if you correct the wise, they will respect you. Anything you say to the wise will make them wiser." Everything Solomon has written here, I have found out to be true in my life. Everything we just read. Whatever you tell the righteous will add to their knowledge. To be wise, you must first have reverence for the Lord. If you know the Holy One, you have understanding. Wisdom will add years to your life. You are the one who will profit if you have wisdom, and if you reject it, you are the one who will suffer. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you, James says later in the New Testament. So let's back up here for just a moment. Did you notice in the reading of those 12 verses in Proverbs chapter 9 that the Bible pictures wisdom as a woman? Did you notice that? Kept using she, right? The Bible pictures wisdom as a woman. And the reason that it does is that women tend to be, I heard only female voices. I tossed it out there like a softball ready to be pounded over the fence. And if you're a man and you're here with a woman who said wise and you didn't say anything, then that means you are a fool. There's a whole section of the Bible that is called wisdom literature. And so we should learn wisdom from the wisdom literature because God desperately wants to give you wisdom. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, Jesus' brother wrote, and he will give it to you. He won't rebuke you for asking. So why don't we do that? How often in public prayers even, much less your private prayer, but how often in public prayers do we ever hear people praying for wisdom? Not very much. Not very much. How often do you in your private prayers pray for wisdom? I hope a lot, but I suspect not very much. And yet he said, if you need it, ask for it. He'll give it to you. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that? Because you see, there's this other woman too that Proverbs talks about in the same chapter. Stupidity is like a loud, ignorant, shameless woman. Man, do not say a word. You men don't even move in your seats. Don't make an eye. Nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat in the highest part of town and calls out to people passing by who are minding their own business, the same as the wise woman did. Come in, ignorant people. To the foolish, she says, stolen water is sweeter, stolen bread tastes better. Her victims do not know that the people die who go to her house. that those who have already entered are now deep in the world of the dead. Wow. So as is given all through the book of Proverbs, there is this picture of the two ways. There is the wise one, and there is the foolish one. Over and over. The two paths throughout the book of Proverbs. There is the wise path, and there is the foolish one. I look at folks in our church who go down the wrong path, sometimes really, really bright people. But every week, there are people who I hear from who have gone down the wrong path in their relationships, or how they deal with anger, or how they've dealt with money, or what they do with their kids, or how they neglect their families, or what they've done in their business, or how they've just drifted into absolute disaster. And I want to say to every single one of us, wisdom would cry out to us like it does from the pages of Proverbs chapter 9, don't go down that path. Don't go down that path. Don't make choices in your everyday life that leave God out of the equation. Make up your mind that you will follow wisdom. And so very quickly in our remaining time today, I'm going to give you some quick proverbs on being wise in certain areas. Some wise things I want to make sure I do. I want to make sure I am wise in my attitudes. Proverbs 10:8 says, the wise are glad to be instructed, but babbling fools fall flat on their face. Two of the most important words you'll come across in a book like Proverbs are the words simple or simple-minded and fool. Both the simple and the fool lack wisdom, but there is a huge difference, and the difference between the simple-minded and the fool is one word. One word. The Proverbs says over and over again, and that is teachability. Teachability. Do I have a coachable spirit? Am I open to correction when I get it wrong? Or do I stiffen up and get defensive if anybody points out anything to me I don't agree with? Proverbs calls that foolish. And I've been there, done that. I remember in the early days of working at this church, and I think probably my wife and I are the only ones left that remember this. Back in the mid-'80s, I formed a little small group called Church Growth Ministry. And it was some of the thinking people in the church, some prominent people, not all leaders. And it was a church growth ministry. We went once a month and we discussed ways we could do better in church. We tried to evaluate what we were doing well and try to improve on what we were doing wrong. And so we met once a month in somebody's home, and I'll never forget, as we were asking in one of the earlier sessions, how are we doing as a church? How can we get better? How can I get better? One man in the group proceeded to tell me in front of everybody else exactly how I could get better. Yeah. And what I found is, at that moment, I just didn't want to listen. I got my feelings hurt, and I got defensive, and I wanted to find reasons to dismiss what he was saying. In other words, I had asked for correction, but I didn't really want to hear correction. I wanted to hear praise. I wanted to hear you're doing a good job. I wanted people to tell me how good I was doing. Does anybody here ever do that, or am I the only one that ever did something like that? And my mind wandered back to one of my mentors, Ira North, who was the preacher for the largest Church of Christ in the world at the time he told me this. The Madison Church of Christ in Nashville, they had nearly 5,000 in attendance. And I'll never forget him telling me, and I've said this to you a million times in a million different settings, hoping at some point somebody will get it. Somebody will get it. He said to me, listen to your critics, Randy. Listen to your critics. They will tell you things your good friends won't tell you because your friends are trying to spare your feelings. And he didn't say agree with your critics. He said listen to your critics. Because they will tell you things your friends won't tell you. Your friends are afraid how you'll react, how you'll respond. Maybe you won't be their friend anymore. No matter how smart you are, if you get stiff-necked and defensive and don't have a teachable or coachable spirit, you will be closing off wisdom to yourself in the area of attitudes. So, when you get coaching or correction or teaching, is your first instinct to resist it and stiffen up? Are you open to it when it comes? Do you lean into it? Or do you just collapse and have your entire self-esteem fall apart? You can actually say, God loves me. This person may or may not love me, but I still want to know if the criticism is true. And then you would be on the wise end of this one, because the wise are glad to be instructed. One of the ways they got wise is by listening and being teachable and coachable. And they understand that, so they're glad to be instructed. Others will fall flat on their faces. I also want to be wise, particularly in this culture today, in practicing biblical sexuality. Proverbs has a lot to say in the area of sex, because human beings can be so foolish and think so slovenly in that particular area. A lot of people think the main command from the Bible when it comes to sex is don't. But that's not actually the main command from the Bible. The main command from the Bible is, let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. Notice it doesn't say, now don't get divorced. Manage to remain married. It says, rejoice. Arrange your marriage, arrange your relationship in a way that you can take great delight in it. Whatever it takes. In fact, it goes on somewhat beyond that. It really does. For instance, Proverbs 11:22 says, a beautiful woman who lacks discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. Now, don't get superficial when you think about something that matters as much as selecting a life partner. Wisdom would plead with you, if you are married, guard your love, value this relationship, talk about it regularly, evaluate it, learn, fight for it when you have to fight for it. Pay whatever price you have to pay for it. I just want to say 3 things here, okay? If you are married, whatever it takes and whatever you need to do to get help, do it. If you are not married but want to be someday, choose really wisely and carefully, because that relationship may have to do not only more with the joy of your entire life, but may actually have to do with the existence of your entire eternity. And 3, whatever you do, don't mess up your life by having sex with somebody you're not married to. It's just foolish. It's what got David in trouble and cost him the height of his reign, the zenith of his kingdom, because of a bad decision relating to a woman. So I want to be wise, particularly in the culture we're living in now, in sexuality, practicing biblical sexuality. But I also want to use wise speech. Probably more stuff in wisdom literature around this one than anything else. Why? Well, because we talk a lot. Because we talk a lot. I mean, we do. Proverbs 27:15 says, as we think about speech, A quarrelsome wife is as annoying as constant dripping on a rainy day. Stopping her complaints is like trying to stop the wind or trying to hold something with greased hands. Okay, ladies, you were laughing when I called you wise a few minutes ago. Expect to hear you laugh now a little bit too. Before you get too excited, this one obviously applies to either gender. You could say a quarrelsome husband is that annoying, if not more so. But the book of Proverbs has an enormous amount to say about our words. The mouth of the righteous is a life-giving fountain, but the words of the wicked hide violent intent. That's what Proverbs 10:11 says. So, are my words a life-giving fountain? I want them to be. When people leave my presence, whether it's an individual session with me or in a group session, I don't want them to think, what a jerk. Some may, but I don't want it to be because I have caused that. When people leave my presence, either individually or as a group, I want it to be like there has been a life-giving fountain. There has been a blessing given here. There has been positive words, positive communication, joy expressed somehow or another, a hug, a proper and warm spirit, whatever it may be. The words of the godly are a life-giving fountain. Maybe that's a proverb you want to memorize and carry around with you all week and keep asking God every day, God, would you make my words life-giving and heart-strengthening and soul-building to the people that I see? Maybe you ought to make this verse your prayer of the heart some of the days this week. Maybe you'll be in a situation where you don't know really what to say. There's a proverb for that situation too. Even fools are thought wise when they keep silent. So if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. With their mouths shut, they seem intelligent. Have you ever thought about that? The most intelligent you may ever look is when you're doing this. Who are you going to hurt by doing this? Nobody. Nobody. Now, I just want to say it's staggering to me how many people go down the route of opening their mouth when they should keep it closed. Where am I on the folly wisdom scale when it comes to speech? I want to use wise speech. Let me say this, and this is getting increasingly important in the world we're living. We don't know what's going to, I'm not trying to get off political or economic here, but we don't know what's going to happen with the dollar. The dollar's in trouble. We know that. And we know some other currencies are in trouble, or things called currencies. So I want to make wise financial choices. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. It's staggering to me to see how many people go down the folly path on an action as simple as developing a regular systematic practice of putting a certain amount of money into savings and investments. It kills their hearts. It kills their spirits. It interferes with their ability to be generous to God. It creates worry and anxiety in their life. Wisdom says, man, go down the right financial path. It really does. You have heard me say this a million times. I'm going to say it again. You either earn interest or you pay interest. Which is best? That's a question. Yeah, earning interest is far better. So this past Vacation Bible School, I taught the teen class all week. And I spent one whole night on money and talking to them about financial lessons and all. And so one of the nights, the way I taught this to them is this. I was trying to teach them this very principle of you either earn interest or you pay interest. So I printed, I think this is illegal, so don't tell anybody. Don't listen if you're online. I printed off several dollar bills. So I would have the serial number on the dollar bill and to keep them. And then I took a dollar bill. I took, I don't know, $40 or $50 bills to the class that night. I believe it was about 38 or 40 were there. And I gave each one of them, how many of you got a dollar bill that night? Or how many around here? All right. So I gave each one of them a dollar bill. And I said, if you bring this dollar bill back to me 1 year from tonight, I'm going to increase it 20-fold. I'm going to trade that dollar bill for a $20 bill. And I said, now you don't have to. You can go spend this dollar bill however you want to right now. You do not have to. You can go spend this $20 bill right now however you want. But if you bring this one, and you can't cheat me because I have marked down the serial numbers. I know what the serial numbers are. So I'm going to check them by what you bring back to me. But if you bring me back this $1 bill, all you got to do is go sit it on your desk. You don't have to do anything. Bring me back that $1 bill. 1 year from tonight, I'm going to give you a $20 bill in exchange for it. Okay? You know, the funniest thing that happened, because I was trying to teach this on earning interest and paying interest and not spending everything you have at one time. You know the funniest thing that happened? This was one of my favorite things I've ever seen happen. Toward the end of the class, in the back of the room, a group of the older guys, the senior high school guys, were trying to finagle how to do this. I'll give you a $5 bill right now for your $1 bill. One of them had tried and said, I'll give you 2 5s for 20 of the ones. And so right now, so they were already negotiating among themselves for instant gratification. Some of them were, as opposed to long-term, high investment interest they were doing. It was a great thing. I thought it was great. They were learning the lesson. The Bible has a lot to say about financial choices. The wise have wealth and luxury. Fools spend whatever they get. I want to have humility that exhibits wisdom. Proverbs says a lot about this one too. It says pride goes before destruction and haughtiness before a fall. Very familiar verse. Or this one says, let someone else praise you, not your own mouth. A stranger, not your own lips. I have to say I do this one really, really well. Who was the lone person that laughed over here? You've got to be the only person in the entire building listening. I thought that was so funny, and I thought everybody'd go, look, he's violating his own verse there. Because you're not supposed to praise yourself. I don't always do this one well. That's the point. There's a remarkable connection in the Bible between humility and wisdom. And one of the most famous statements in all the Bible is, pride goes before destruction and haughtiness before a fall. There's something about when I get caught up in my own self-sufficiency, and man, can we do that so easily, that we set ourselves up for destruction. And finally, I want to be wise in commitments. And ultimately, this one really is the most important. Am I wise in my commitment? Am I wise in my most important commitment to God Almighty? So my life verse, most of you have been around here for a while know this. I went to a Bill Gothard conference over 40 years ago, and he said, develop a life verse. I came home and did that. It's trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him. He will make your path straight. It's so significant and so important to me that I wrote an entire book based upon it. the book was What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do, several years ago, was written entirely based on Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and you lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him. You see, wisdom is wonderful. Wisdom makes for better friends, for better character, for better lives, for better financial management, for better workers, for better communities, for better citizens, for better nations, for better parents. But wise people still get betrayed. Wise people still die. That is why Bible wisdom is much more important than life management. It is that, but it's much more. It's eternity preparation. It's eternity preparation. Paul writes this fabulous passage in Colossians that connects wisdom to Jesus. Watch the connection. Christ is the invisible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. For through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see and the things we cannot see, such as thrones and kingdoms and rulers and authorities in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all creation together. And he is also the head of the church, which is his body. He is the beginning, supreme over all who rise from the dead. He is first in everything. So I want you to be encouraged and knit together by strong ties of love. I want you to have complete confidence and understand God's mysterious plan. And what is God's mysterious plan? Christ himself, because in him lie hidden all the treasures of wisdom. In him lie hidden all the treasures of wisdom. God has done something amazing. Wisdom, which lives in the highest place in Christ, has come down to the lowest place, earth, among sinners. One day wisdom came down in the flesh, and the Word, the Logos, became flesh and shared with us all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Wisdom came down in the flesh, the Logos, and loved us and suffered on a cross and died and was raised again. And wisdom, thank God, is far, far better and more powerful than common sense and practical advice and navigating life safely. Wisdom bets it all on a God who died on a cross and got resurrected on the third day. And the writers of the New Testament realized they had all loved and cherished and prized about wisdom that they found in Jesus. In Jesus. The ultimate wisdom is Jesus. And the wisest thing you will ever do is make sure he, the author of wisdom, lives within your heart. The wisest thing you will ever do is make sure that you are prepared not to just navigate this life well, but navigate all eternity well. That's the wisest thing you'll ever do. In him is all wisdom. And so, we began this morning our worship together with the old children's A Wise Man built his house on the rock of Jesus, and the foolish man built on the sands of this world. One is the path of wisdom, the other is the path of foolishness. We're all going to take one of the two. Choose wisely.